Guys, I'm going to leave the window open because you can hear the birds chirping outside. It is so nice. So today we're doing just an old-fashioned get ready with me because I promised to show you and I didn't really get around to it so far, but I got two new interesting things, I think, for you as well. The Natasha Denona mini gold palette and this beautiful Cover FX blush duo in the shade Warm Honey. And a couple of you wanted to know how I feel about these products, so I figured this is not a first impressions, by the way. I've already used them before. The blush especially I've used on many occasions. I just wanted to, you know, come back and use these products with you so that you can also see how they work. I'm just going to start priming my lids and I'm using my MAC 24-Hour Extend Eye Base, which, as you guys know, is one of my staples. It is pretty much the only primer that I've been using for the past year or so, ever since I panned everything else that I owned in terms of eyeshadow primers. I'm just very, when it comes to my base products, sometimes I can be very like stuck and I don't want to try too many things, because if something works, it just works. It's a base product. I don't need to go out of my way to try it than others. For my brows, I'm going to just pull out my Anastasia brow powder duo, which I'm trying my best to finish up. This is one of the products that I insist on finishing up, even though I don't necessarily use brow powder products much anymore. I do now because I want to finish this, but other than that I'm sort of done with brow powders. But this is a really nice product, and honestly there's so much in here that I think I'm going to be at it for another few years. I sort of very quickly finished my brows off camera, guys, because Nicola was crying and I had to go check on him, but I'm back now. Hopefully he's going to continue sleeping because I think he woke up way too early and he's still way too tired. So let me open this up and show you guys. This is how the mini gold palette looks like. You get quite interesting tones in here. You get these two shades, which are sort of like duochromy flaky shades. This one, which is more of like a satin shimmer shade, and these two are mattes. Now, I used this palette once and I thought the look was quite pretty, but I was not like over the moon. I was not as in love with it as I am with the Natasha Denona gold palette, which I also have, by the way. But I also think that a lot has to do with the fact that I think this palette would just pair beautifully with the gold palette, and that is not something I have done yet. So also for today I'm just going to stick to the mini gold palette because I want to show you how that works, but eventually I will probably be pulling this palette out mostly to use together with the big gold palette. So the first time I used it, I actually did use this shade already all over my lid, and I want to do something different, so I want to go in with this shade, which is like the gold green duochrome shade, which looks a lot like one of the shades in the gold palette, in the big gold palette, and we're going to compare in a bit. I also did use pretty much all of the other shades, really, except for this one. I think I used this one just the tiniest bit on my inner corners, but today I want to put it on my lids. So I'm going to start off with this shade here, which is like a mid-tone brown transition shade with sort of like yellowish greenish tones to it. It's actually a really nice shade. There is no question about the quality of these eyeshadows. They're really nice. I don't really know why I didn't fall in love with it the first time I used it, so let's try it again. Maybe I just wasn't in the right mental state and I didn't do a look that really impressed me. So let's find out today whether I start to feel a little bit more enthusiastic about this palette. Now the next shade I want to dip into, and probably one of the biggest reasons that I bought this palette, is this gorgeous green over here. This is a beautiful like army green, and I love these sort of greens, and I don't really think I have that many in a matte formula, not even in a shimmer formula, but in a matte formula especially. I think I have something similar in the Subculture palette, but that is pretty much it. So I'm going to put this shade here towards the outer corner of the eye, and I'm also going to put it right here in the inner portion of the eye, because we're going to be doing apparently a halo eye. I wasn't really planning on it, but that's what we're doing. I really love this shade, but I have to say I feel like it applies a bit lighter on the lids than it looks in the pan, or at least that's how I feel. which makes it even more interesting because normally these sort of like olive greens tend to be quite deep in tone and have a lot of like brown tones to them, and this one is really just plain army green. It's so pretty. I'm just taking a little bit of time to blend this shade well into the crease, and especially towards the outer corner, because honestly I really struggle with doing halo eyes in such a way that they don't make my eyes look too round. So I'm going to try to probably later work a little bit more on my outer corners to elongate them a bit more. Next I'm going to grab a glitter glue. This is Pixie Epoxy from Tyranny, and I want to apply this in the center of my lid where I want to have the flaky duochrome shade. And I'm just going to use my finger and dip into the beautiful duochrome shade, which looks like this. It looks very sparkly and very pretty. And I'm going to pop that onto the center of the lid. Oh wow, that's really beautiful. Wow. Okay, this shade is really gorgeous, without a doubt. Probably the prettiest thing in this palette. But I have some doubts that it looks a lot like the topper shades, or one of the topper shades in the Big Gold palette. We are going to swatch that in a little bit, but I do really love this shade. Okay, now I'm going to start working on the outer corners right here, just to make sure that my eye doesn't look very round. So I'm just going to sort of like elongate from my lower lash line upwards to connect with the upper lid without taking it too low. It is always a tricky game to play though. I am quickly going to tightline using an olive green pencil. And I'm actually going to take this olive green pencil also into my waterline. I'm going to take a super small shader brush and I'm going to stick with the greens also for my lower lash line. I'm going to apply this guy, but I am going to actually spritz my brush because it's a quite flaky shade and I don't want it to be all over my eye, and I just spritz my camera because I'm so dumb. Okay, I'm going to run this across my lower lashes. I'm also going to apply this in my waterline, being very careful with not getting it inside my eye, which inevitably part of it will end up in your eye. So if you have really sensitive eyes, don't do that. Now there is really no shade in here that can serve as an inner corner highlight, so you might see this as a disadvantage. I personally don't really care because you can pull out literally anything, including a highlighter for that. I'm going to pull out Urban Decay Sin. It is a really beautiful like beigey gold highlighter, and I'm just going to apply the tiniest bit here into my inner corners, trying to keep it quite subtle though, because I don't want to take away from what's going on in the center of the lids. I have to tell you, I'm enjoying this eye look much more than I enjoyed the first one. I think mostly because I can see more of the matte green eyeshadow in my first look. I kind of like covered most of it with other eyeshadows because I deepened it up in the outer corner, I put something on the lid, and then I couldn't really see the matte green shade. But now that I can see more of it, I'm really enjoying the look. I'm going to move on to my foundation, and I'm going to use a combination of two foundations that by themselves don't really work so well for me. The first one is the Pat McGrath Labs Sublime Perfection Foundation. This is a really nice foundation formula, but some days the powder will keep it in place and it will look fine, but on quite a lot of days, by the 6-hour mark, I will see little like slippages of foundation here and there, and it always happens to me with this foundation. The other thing about this foundation is that unfortunately, because I matched myself online and I bought the foundation on launch day without knowing anything about the shades, I bought a shade that is way too light for me. So I have to mix it in with something else. Now luckily I have this foundation here, which is the Hourglass Vanish Seamless Finish Foundation. This is a super full coverage foundation, you guys. It is way too full coverage for my taste. It is very thick, it's quite difficult to work with on its own. So what I do nowadays is I mix these two, and I'm hoping to be able to pan them by the end of the year. So I put like the tiniest bit, like just a little squirt from the Vanish Stick foundation because that is so full coverage. And then I just do one pump from the Pat McGrath foundation, which as you can see is much lighter in color and also lightweight in terms of texture. And I sort of mix them in, and I think they make a much better shade match for me right now. And they also create more of a texture that I like to work with. Something that is not too liquid, not too thick, and it has sort of like a medium coverage. And I always use a sponge, by the way. I always admire people who can use a brush, because as soon as I bust out a brush, my skin and my foundation look absolutely dreadful, because all the dry spots on my face just come out to say hi. So all in all, I'm actually really enjoying using these two foundations together. I think they make the perfect combo for me personally in terms of color and in terms of texture, so I'm not really too mad that I have to mix them. More so, I'm happy that I have found a way to use both of these foundations up eventually. Now the next product I'm going to use is also something new that I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video. This is the Hourglass ambient lighting powder in the shade Dim Light. Dim Light is this really nice beige color. Now this thing is tiny, you guys. It is so fucking tiny. Let me just show you the full size. This is the baby ambient lighting powder. It's like super tiny. There's still quite a lot of product in here, and I think it's fine for the purposes that I bought it for, which is to try whether Dim Light is a good shade match and a good formula for me, which I have to say it is. The only thing I struggle with is how the fuck do I go in here with such a big brush, because I like to use a big brush for my powder, so I basically just try to cover most of the brush with product before I go in on my face. And I have to say, so far I really enjoy this powder. It is exactly the color that fits me. I like the finish of it, just I like the finish of Moonlight. Moonlight is just a little bit more purple, and sometimes it can make me look a little bit pink, so I have to be more careful with it, whereas this one I can just pile on because it's exactly my complexion shade. Okay, you guys, mascara is done, and now I'm going to apply my bronzer. I'm going to dip into my Chanel Soleil Tan de Chanel bronzer, which is a cream bronzer. I really love that it's spring now and I can finally bust out all of my cream and liquid complexion products. For whatever reason, I just don't ever use them. It's in the winter. I'm just going to take a little brush like this one and just sort of stipple this onto my face like this. I heard that they changed the formula and the color of this bronzer, which bums me out a little bit because I actually really like it. But considering how much product you get in here and how slowly you get through it if you have a ton of other bronzers, then I'm probably going to use this for another, I don't know, decade or something. So I don't really need to buy another Chanel bronzer anytime soon, but I'm still super bummed for the people who haven't tried this bronzer and are going to be disappointed when they buy it now. Or, you know, so I've heard that the new formula and the new color are not as nice as the original. I'm just going to push a tiny bit of whatever is left here into my hairline. Nothing too dramatic, because I don't really like to bronze the rest of my face too much. And now we can bust out the third and final, for now, new product that I have to show you, because I have a confession to make before we proceed. I bought a shit ton of new things, you guys. I was doing really well until mid-March or so. Until mid-March, the only things that I had bought were that Millennial Pinks palette and a few of those Sonergy brushes. That was it. And then after the quarantine started, first of all, I decided that I really needed to try the Mini Gold palette after I had convinced myself that I don't need it. And then in April, things got really bonkers. So expect to see a lot of new product first impression types of videos from me, because I bought so many more things than I was, you know, planning on. It's not like I bought an exorbitant amount of things, but there were definitely a couple of things in there that I would call impulse purchases and things that I didn't really need. But we're gonna get to that when the products arrive. And now let's focus on the Cover FX blush. Now, this is definitely not something that I regret. This is something that I had wanted for a really long time, ever since these were launched. And by the way, look how beautiful they are. I just really love everything about this blush, you guys. I love the packaging. It's like so sleek and so simple and so classy at the same time. I love the idea of having like a matte and a shimmer formula that you can combine or use on their own, whatever floats your boat. I have to say that The only color that I always ever wanted to have is this one. This is the shade Warm Honey, because it is a very unique color and I don't think I have a blush like this in my collection. So I decided not to get any of the usual colors that I fall for, which is the oranges and the peach colors, because I already have a crap ton of these kind of colors. So I thought if I allow myself getting one of these blushes, it has to be in a color that I don't have, which is this one. Now, I don't really use them by themselves. I always mix them in together. So I always just go like this with my blush brush, and then I just work them onto my cheeks, and I have to say they work really beautifully together, and the color is just this beautiful warm honey color, so pretty. And what I will do also a little bit as of late is I will put a little bit of this onto the bridge of my nose, because I feel like it makes me look so sun-kissed, like I've been on the beach. Now for highlighter, I'm going to keep it really simple and just go back in with that Urban Decay highlighter that I used earlier, because it is a beautiful, you know, sort of gold neutral shade that works really well for someone with my skin tone, because it really lifts my cheeks up. A lot of my other highlighters tend to be a bit darker and probably are not ideal for my skin tone, but I use them and love them anyway. And by the way, I mentioned recently in a video how much I love this brush, so I think it's really nice to see it in action. Now, before I apply my lip color, I'm going to quickly spritz my little spongy sponge here with Fix Plus. This is how I apply my setting spray. I don't really spritz it onto my face, because I feel like you use so much more product when you need so little. And I just use this, especially here on my cheek area, to marry all the powders that I have applied better together. And then for the rest I just go on across my face. For lips, I'm actually going to keep it really simple. I just want to put a lip gloss. I'm going to first put down my primer though, because otherwise the lip gloss is definitely going to bleed. And I apply this, I make sure that I go all over the lip lines. This is the MAC Lip Primer, by the way, which I also recently mentioned in a video, my staple makeup products video. I'm going to line my lips, and on my lips I'm going to apply the shade Flash 6 from Pat McGrath. I really love this shade. This is the final look, you guys. Now, in conclusion, I have to say there is really not one amongst these products that I really truly don't like. But if I have to say one, which probably was an impulse purchase and something I didn't need, I would have to go with the Mini Gold palette. Given that I have the big Natasha Denona Gold palette, which is very special to me, and you're going to see a Project 5 verse with it very soon, if not already, then I didn't really need to have the Mini Gold. Yes, a couple of the shades in here would probably work really well with what's in the big palette, but for the most part, I didn't really need this. Now, it's not very expensive, but I still didn't need it. Now, I want to quickly swatch all of the eyeshadows for you, just so you can get an idea of what we are talking about with this little palette. But here we have the deep green, brown green duochrome shade. There we have the beautiful green olive army green matte, the gorgeous flaky sort of green gold with a bit of red tones to it as well. Now this shade I actually want to compare to two of the shades in the big Natasha Denona Gold palette, namely this one and this one. I don't think it's going to be like this one, because this one has much more lime green tones to it, but maybe something like this one. So let's swatch this one next to it, next to the gold shade from the Mini Gold palette, just to see how different they are. Okay, so they are actually quite different. This one actually seems to have more green tones to it compared to this one. This one almost tends to have... This one almost seems like it has a bit of an orangish reddish base to it, whereas this one has a more brownish base to it. Or at least that's how I'm seeing it. But they're both shiny and beautiful. The next shade in the Mini Gold palette is this satin dark green brown shade, which is honestly the least exciting shade in this palette. But I do appreciate that we have a nice shade to deepen looks up with, so I'm not mad at having this shade in here. And this is the nice, transition shade Nothing too groundbreaking or too interesting, but yet a very handy palette shade to have in a palette like this. Honestly, I think it's a great selection of colors that go really well together and you can do quite a lot with it. The formula is phenomenal, and honestly, because you get all these different textures of eyeshadows, this particular mini is really worth it, especially if you are, you know, curious about Natasha Denona but you don't want to pay the Natasha Denona prices. Like I said, I absolutely love the little Cover FX Duo blush. They're definitely on the expensive side, so I highly recommend thinking very carefully about one shade that you would really like to have and just go for that one, because I don't think you need all of them. But that being said, I do recommend this formula if you're curious about the Cover FX Duo blushes. They're really nice. And the final product is the mega tiny super mini Hourglass ambient lighting powder. I'm really happy with this product actually, because the whole point was for me to try it. I think this only costs 15 euros comparing to 50, I think 50 or 45 or something of the sort, which is what the big one costs. And I didn't really want to buy the big one if I was not sure that the color is going to work for me, because that's what I did with Mood Light. And while I can use Mood Light and it's fine, I have to actually be careful to do it with a light hand when I use Mood Light because of that slight purplish tone to it. But this one is perfect for me, and I think if I ever finish Mood Light and I ever finish this one, I'm just going to purchase the full size of this one. So this is also a highly recommended product. And if you're curious and you have access to Sephora, then definitely try the minis, because they're a great way to just try out the Hourglass ambient lighting powder formula. I hope you guys enjoyed this little get ready with me talking about a few new products that I purchased. Prepare yourself, just mentalize for many more of these types of videos coming, because like I said, I went on a bit of a spree there. And I hope you're all doing well. Be mindful, don't fall into the trap of buying shit just because you want to have something to look forward to. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you would like to see more of me, and I will see you in my next video.